Here to break down winners and losers from Friday night's preseason games, we bring in our NFL writer, Tyler Sullivan. 5 games on Friday kicked off the first weekend of preseason, and these games are more about assessing players and not putting too much stock in the end result. With that in mind, who are your overall winners of the night?
Yeah, for me, number one, it was the first game out of the gate. The Detroit Lions looked extremely sharp offensively. When the first team offense was out there, it was a smooth operation for Jared Goff and the rest of that unit. I mean, they fly down the field, 10 plays, 79 yards, and they get a touchdown. And you're against the Atlanta Falcons. You're not expected to be a pretty good football team defensively for them. You know, obviously they're in a rebuild going into kind of a new quarterback and new transition there in Atlanta. But ultimately, when you look at it from the Lions' perspective, it was everything that you could ask for and everything that you could hope for. Jared Goff wasn't asked to make any ridiculous throws. He played within his talent frame and was able to move the ball down the field, whether it was in the backfield or in the passing game. So for me, that's extremely encouraging from what we've seen with Detroit. Obviously, they add Aiden Hutchinson on the defensive side of the ball. They have pieces now on offense. Jared Goff is who he is. He can game manage. He can be able to move the ball down the field. He's not going to be able to win you some games, but if this offense can play like that on a weekly basis, well, then that's going to be extremely interesting when you look at what the NFC North is going to look like. They have a ton of these offenses now that are high-powered. Obviously, the Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers, the Minnesota Vikings now with new head coach Kevin O'Connell. If what we saw from Detroit is even close to that during the regular season, you got to be encouraged for what you see.
Who else did you like on Friday night?
Yeah, so for me, again, you go down the list here. For me, number one, Jalen Hurts. You talk about coming out of this game sharp. He completed all 6 of his passes for 80 yards and a touchdown. I mean, it was just remarkable. And that's been the biggest question that we've seen from Hurts so far. It's how is he going to be able to translate as a passer? We know his ability running the football and what he can do with his legs. What is separating from him to be a superstar quarterback in the NFL is what he can do as a passer. And again, you know, you look at what he's been able to do in this game, had a nice connection there with Dallas Goedert. If he's able to be that efficient, and of course, he's going to throw some incompletions. You're not going to go 6 for 6. You're not going to complete every single one of your passes on a weekly basis. But he is someone who I find very interesting going into the year. You talk about a guy who's 30-1 to win NFL MVP. You add A.J. Brown in the offseason. You're in year 2 in Nick Sirianni's system. If all of a sudden things start to click for Jalen Hurts and this Philadelphia Eagles team could make a lot of noise in the NFC East and really can maybe be a dark horse in the NFC as a whole. They have a very easy schedule this year in terms of strength of schedule, opponents' win percentage from last year. It is one of the easier schedules in the NFL. And if Jalen Hurts can make this leap as a passer, well, then you have to really start to take the Philadelphia Eagles seriously.
And the preseason isn't just about the players on the field. It's sometimes about those guys on the sideline, even some coaches and new teams.
Yeah, and you know, look nowhere else other than Jacksonville with Doug Peterson. It's night and day from what the Jaguars have been able to look like so far. Obviously, we know what went on with Urban Meyer last year. It just was not something that was a, you know, great environment for a young guy like Trevor Lawrence to succeed, or really anybody there. And you even saw it in the Hall of Fame game coming out. It was just a much smoother operation. Yes, you didn't see any of the starters in that game, but overall, it was a much better, well-run operation there. And when you look at specifically with Trevor Lawrence, this is really all about him at this point and how he is going to react to Doug Peterson. The Urban Meyer situation, I think, hurt his development tremendously last year, and now we're trying to figure out how he can recover that and continue on this path to be the next Andrew Luck, John Elway, Peyton Manning, the guys that were mentioned about him when he was coming into the NFL as the #1 overall pick. I think Doug Peterson helped stabilize that organization, and we're already starting to see it there in this game today. He started to look like that #1 Trevor Lawrence guy we saw in Clemson, a passer rating of over 100 for the game. Again, it's just, I think that stability that he brings, Doug Peterson, is going to make the Jaguars a more competitive team for the long haul, and it's going to help Trevor Lawrence kind of ascend to what we hope to be that elite quarterback.
A lot of really good things we saw on Friday night. But Tyler, what about your losers?
Yeah, you know, there's always going to be a few. Let's look at first and foremost Drake London. injured out of the gate. And that's really the big story there for them. It's nothing that he didn't play poorly or anything along those lines. He just wasn't necessarily on the field. And when you look at a Falcons team that is rebuilding, you look at what the pieces that they have on offense, Drake London, the #1 wide receiver taken in the draft earlier this spring, he's going to be asked to carry a lot of the workload. Him and Kyle Pitts, those are going to be the two young pieces that are going to carry this passing game for the Atlanta Falcons. And so, again, we have to wait and see what happens with that injury. It doesn't seem like it's too serious. He was still on the sidelines during the game. And, it's an exhibition. You're not going to put him out there later on after he suffers an injury like that. But they were quick to rule him out for the rest of the night. And so that is a little bit of cause for concern. We have to just see what the tests kind of come out and say. But ultimately, you want to see him get his feet wet. You remember, earlier in his college days at USC, he missed the final 4 games of the year due to a fracture in his ankle. So again, this is somebody who has kind of dealt with injuries over the last calendar year. So you hope that this one isn't serious. But ultimately, again, was fine on that one target, but you want to have him there for all 4 quarters.
Yeah, worst part of the preseason is those injuries, and we saw that early there in Atlanta. And for the Jets, they won the game, but possibly suffering a loss far greater than that with Zach Wilson getting injured early in the first quarter.
Yeah, and what's more concerning about that, and when you look at that compared to what happened with Drake London, this was a non-contact injury. He was kind of rolling out, scrambling out right, was trying to make a cut going towards the middle of the field, and it just kind of felt like that right knee gave out from him. And so you kind of hold your breath whenever those kind of injuries happen, because we all kind of fear and kind of know what that may mean and for how long someone could be out for again, an injury of that magnitude. We have to wait and see, obviously, what's going to happen. After the game, Robert Saleh, head coach of the New York Jets, did say that it does appear like Wilson's ACL is intact. Obviously, they have to have the tests, the MRIs he's going to have tomorrow. Those are the tests that are really going to tell the story. But at least those initial tests are at least a little bit encouraging. That's, I guess, something that you can hang your hat on if you're a New York Jets fan, if you're following that organization. But again, not only was he dealing with the injury, he didn't really play well, prior to that as well. He did throw an interception that, to me, wasn't a particularly great ball, kind of telegraphed it earlier. So kind of a multiple different fronts here for Zach Wilson. The injuries and also the interception beforehand, it's not particularly the hottest start that you want to see from your former #2 overall pick going into year 2.
Yeah, that injury is something we're going to be following. Also, a high-octane player, Deshaun Watson, on and off the field. He's garnered a lot of conversation and a lot of attention. What did you think of his outing after not being on the field for so long?
Yeah, and so it was 19 months since the last time Deshaun Watson was on an NFL field. And obviously, you kind of want to see what that's going to look like. I think that, the Browns obviously have been dragged through the mud here for going and acquiring this guy and paying him like they are, $230 million guaranteed. The one thing that you could hang your hat on was to say, okay, it is the talent. We are banking on this guy, Deshaun Watson, the football player, elevating us as a franchise. And he did anything but in this preseason opener. Again, a ton of rust, obviously. Didn't play in 19 months, but 1 for 5 for 7 yards on his only 3 drives of the night. They were unable to score any points there. It just felt like he was missing the mark, whether it was distractions for off the field or the rust. It just was not a smooth operation. Did not look like a $230 million player there for me and Deshaun Watson. And that's going to be the biggest question now. I mean, we know at least he's going to have a 6-game suspension. The NFL is obviously appealing it. They want to push for a full year ban. If that's the case, you're going to see in 2023 a very rusty Deshaun Watson who hasn't played in over 2 years. So, you might be paying $230 million for this guy, but I don't know if you're going to get that right out of the gate, whether that's in week 7 when he comes back, if this appeal is denied by the NFL, or if it's going to be at some point at the start of 2023. It's going to take a ramp-up period for this guy to get back to what we have seen him be on the field as one of the more talented quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, one of those questions that needs to be answered in due time. I want to circle back to the Jets. You made an interesting point about Wilson's injury. Jets head coach Robert Saleh and offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur have plenty of familiarity with Jimmy Garoppolo when they all in San Francisco. If Zach Wilson can't come back, how well or how viable do you see Jimmy G coming in and kind of being an answer in the meantime there in Florham Park?
Yeah, no, I think that makes all the sense in the world. I think this is the reason why the San Francisco 49ers decided to hang on to Jimmy Garoppolo for as long as they have to this point, because there was really no market for him over the course of the offseason as he was recovering from shoulder surgery. And so at this point, you say, all right, well, let's wait. Let's let training camps across the league open. Let's have the preseason unfold. And if something like this, what we're seeing possibly in New York with Zach Wilson, if this does end up being a season-ending type of situation for him, it makes all the sense in the world for the New York Jets to kind of target Jimmy Garoppolo. Obviously, like you mentioned, the relationship is there with Robert Saleh and in the offensive staff from their time with the San Francisco 49ers. So Garoppolo would probably be pretty receptive to joining the New York Jets because of that familiarity, for him to kind of hit the ground running. It's not like he has to go in and learn a completely new system, a completely new offense. He can kind of come in here more so than any other landing spot that he possibly may find in the NFL and hit the ground running a little bit more. So again, that makes a ton of sense. And if you're the 49ers, this is exactly, again, why you hang on to him. You wanted to maximize this asset before you have to maybe be forced to cut him. And so this is one of those situations. And honestly, the Cleveland Browns could be one as well. If all of a sudden Deshaun Watson is suspended for all of this season, well, then Garoppolo is an option there as well. So again, this is the smart play for the 49ers. Hang on to him to this point, and let's see where other doors and other opportunities open, like possibly here in New York. And also, it would be pretty interesting from a side story to have Jimmy Garoppolo back in the AFC East going up against Bill Belichick twice a year.
Oh, yeah, add that extra layer, and we appreciate it there. Tyler Sullivan with your winners and losers from Friday night preseason football. Thank you.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.